My girlfriend and I had been planning the trip for months. 4 days on the Northville Placid Trail in the Adirondacks. 50 miles of backcountry, no cell service, no cabins, no other people if you timed it right. That was the point. We wanted to disappear for a while, get away from screens and noise and everything else. We started on a Thursday morning in late September. The leaves were just beginning to turn, and the first 2 days were exactly what we wanted. Clear skies, cold mornings, total silence except for our footsteps and the occasional bird. On the second night, we set up camp at a spot by a creek. Flat ground, good tree cover, far enough from the trail that you wouldn't see us unless you were looking. We cooked dinner, watched the fire die down, and crawled into the tent around 9. I fell asleep fast. The kind of sleep you only get when your body is genuinely tired and the air is cold enough that your sleeping bag feels like the only safe place in the world. I woke up at 2 a.m., not slowly, all at once, like something had flipped a switch. My eyes were open and I was listening before I understood why. Footsteps. Outside the tent, slow, deliberate crunching on dry leaves, not an animal. Animals don't walk in steady, measured steps. Animals don't circle, because that's what it was doing, circling around the tent, one full loop, then another. I put my hand over my girlfriend's mouth and shook her awake. Her eyes went wide. I held a finger to my lips and pointed at the tent wall. The footsteps stopped, right outside, maybe 3 feet from where we lay. I could hear breathing, not heavy, not labored, calm, patient, someone standing still and breathing through their nose. Then a sound I'll never forget, a finger running along the outside of the tent, slowly, from the base up to the top, tracing the seam of the rainfly, like someone testing the fabric, feeling how thin it was. My girlfriend grabbed my arm so hard her nails broke skin. Neither of us moved, neither of us breathed. The finger stopped. The footsteps started again. One more circle, then they moved away. Not toward the trail, on into the woods, deeper into the trees. The crunching of leaves got quieter and quieter until it stopped. We didn't move for an hour. I kept my hand on the knife I'd packed, the one I told myself was for cutting rope and preparing food. At some point, the adrenaline faded enough for exhaustion to pull me under. When we woke up at dawn, I unzipped the tent and looked around. The campsite was exactly as we'd left it, except for the footprints. Bare feet, in the mud around the tent, a clear, deliberate circle, 6, maybe 7 passes around us in the night. No shoes, no boots. Barefoot, in the Adirondacks, in late September. On a trail 30 miles from the nearest road. We packed in 8 minutes. We didn't eat. We didn't filter water. We shoved everything into our packs and started walking. The plan had been 2 more days on the trail. We abandoned that plan without discussing it. We were heading for the nearest trailhead 13 miles south. Around mile 4, my girlfriend stopped. She was looking at a tree about 10 feet off the trail. I looked too. Scratched into the bark at eye level were 2 words. Fresh, the exposed wood still pale and wet. Found you. We ran, not jogged, ran, with 40-pound packs on our backs on uneven trail for as long as our legs would carry us. When we couldn't run, we walked fast. When we had to stop to breathe, we stood back to back and watched the trees. We didn't see anyone. That was almost worse. The trail was empty. The forest was silent, just birds and wind and our own panicked breathing. But every 100 yards, I'd look back and feel certain that something had just stepped behind a tree. We reached the trailhead at 2 p.m. My car was the only one in the lot. We drove to the nearest town and reported it to a ranger station. The ranger listened, nodded, wrote some things down. Then he said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You're the 3rd couple this season." He wouldn't say more than that. Told us they were looking into it and that the section of trail near our campsite had been flagged. I asked what that meant. He said they'd increased patrols, but that the backcountry was big and people could be hard to find when they didn't want to be found. I looked up the Northville Placid Trail when we got home. Forum posts going back years. People describing footsteps at night, circling, things scratched into trees. One post from 2019 described finding a crude lean-to shelter a quarter-mile off the trail, built out of branches and tarps with empty cans and a mattress inside. We never went backcountry camping again. We do state parks now, the ones with numbered sites and rangers and other families and bathrooms with locks. The ones where being alone in the dark is a choice, not a condition. Before we move on, if you're listening to this alone right now, do me a favor. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, the next story is worse. I go camping alone. I know that sounds like the setup for exactly this kind of story, but I've been doing it for years. I find a state campground, pick a quiet site away from the families, and I spend the weekend reading and fishing and not talking to anyone. It's the only way I can actually relax. Last October, I booked 3 nights at a campground in the Ozarks. It was a Monday through Wednesday stretch, so the place was nearly deserted. When I pulled in, there were maybe 4 other camps occupied out of 30 sites. I chose Site 16. Nice and flat, good shade, fire ring in decent shape. The site next to me, we'll do 14, had a tent. Small, green, 2-person tent. No car, no gear outside, just the tent, zip shut. I didn't think much of it that first evening. Some people hike into campgrounds. Maybe they'd parked at a different lot. Maybe a friend dropped them off. I built my fire, made dinner, read until the flames got low, and went to bed. In the morning, the tent at Site 14 was exactly the same. Zipped shut. No movement, no smoke from the fire ring, no one cooking breakfast. I spent the day at the lake. Came back around 5, same. Tent zipped, no sign of life. That night I sat by my fire and watched the tent. Not intentionally at first, but it was right there, 30 feet away, lit by the edge of my firelight. I watched it for 2 hours. Nothing. No shadow moving inside. No flashlight. No sound. The second morning I noticed the chair, a folding camp chair positioned in front of the tent at Site 14, facing my site. It hadn't been there the night before. I was certain of that. I'd stared at that tent for 2 hours by firelight. There was no chair. Someone had set it up in the middle of the night, positioned it so that whoever sat in it would be looking directly at my tent. I walked over, not to the tent, just close enough to see details. The chair was old, faded green fabric, aluminum frame. Dew on the seat, meaning it had been out for hours. The tent zipper was closed. No sounds from inside. "Hello?" I called. Nothing. "Hey, you all right in there?" Silence. I walked to the ranger station a quarter-mile down the road, told the ranger on duty that the tent at Site 14 had been there since I arrived and I hadn't seen anyone come or go. Said I was worried someone might be hurt inside. The ranger checked his computer, looked up, then back at the screen. "Site 14 isn't booked." "There's a tent there," I said. "Site 14 hasn't been booked in 3 weeks. It was closed for maintenance last month, drainage issue. There's a tent there right now, and a chair that showed up last night." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up a radio. 2 rangers came back with me. They approached the tent the way you'd approach something you weren't sure about. Slow, one behind the other. The second one staying back by the truck. The first ranger called out. No answer. He unzipped the tent, empty. No sleeping bag, no pad, no personal items. Just the tent floor, and in the center of it a phone. An old flip phone, the kind you buy prepaid at a gas station. It was turned on. The screen showed a photo. The photo was of my campsite, taken at night, from close enough to see my tent, my fire ring, my camp chair with my book on it. taken from the direction of Site 14. While I was sleeping, the ranger closed the phone and put it in a bag. His expression had changed from routine to something more focused. How long did you say you've been here? Since Monday, 2 nights. And you haven't seen anyone at this site? Not walking by, not in the trees, nothing? No one. He told me they'd file a report. He told me I might want to consider relocating to a site closer to the ranger station. He did not tell me I was overreacting. He did not tell me it was probably nothing. I moved to Site 2, right by the station, packed up everything in daylight and relocated while the rangers were still there. I thought about leaving entirely. I should have. That last night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tent and listened. Around 1 a.m. I heard a car engine. Slow, no headlights. I could hear it but couldn't see it through the tent fabric. It drove through the campground loop road and stopped. Engine idled for maybe 30 seconds, then it drove away. In the morning I walked back to Site 14. The tent and the chair were gone. The site was bare, just the fire ring and the gravel pad and the post with the number 14 on it, like nothing had ever been there. I called the ranger station. They said they hadn't removed anything. No one had. I don't camp in the Ozarks anymore. I don't camp alone anymore either, and every time I set up at a new site, the first thing I do is check the sites around me. Not for noise, not for shade. For tents with no one inside. One more story to go. If you're still here, you already know this channel is for you. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We post new stories every week. The listing said secluded mountain retreat, perfect for groups. It had 4.8 stars and 60 reviews. The photos showed a clean 2-bedroom cabin with a wraparound porch, a fire pit, and views of the Smoky Mountains. 30 minutes from the nearest town. No neighbors within a mile. There were 4 of us. Me, my buddy Jake, and 2 friends from college, Dean and Marco. A guy's weekend, hiking, drinking, poker, the usual. We booked it for Friday to Sunday. We got there around 6 p.m. The cabin was exactly like the photos, clean, furnished, well-maintained. A lockbox on the door with a code. No host, no check-in person, just the code and a welcome sheet on the kitchen counter. Everything was fine. Until the basement. Jake found it first. A door off the hallway past the bedroom secured with a padlock. Not the kind you'd put on a shed. A heavy-duty lock, the kind you'd use to keep people out. Or in. Owner probably stores stuff down there, Dean said. Lawnmower, seasonal gear. He was probably right. It was probably nothing. But the lock was new. Shiny brass, no scratches. And the door frame around it had marks. Deep gouges in the wood, concentrated around the lock plate, like someone had tried to pry it open from the inside. We left it alone, opened some beers, started a fire in the pit outside. The weekend began. It was around 1 a.m. We were 3 hours into poker, and Jake and Marco were arguing about a hand when I heard it. A single thump from below the floor. Not a settling noise. Not a creak or a pop. A thump, like something heavy being set down, or a footstep on concrete. "Did you hear that?" I said. "Hear what?" Jake asked. I listened. Nothing, just the fire crackling in the pit outside and the wind in the trees. I let it go. 20 minutes later, it happened again. 2 thumps this time. Dull, rhythmic, from directly beneath where we were sitting. Everyone heard it that time. We stood in the hallway staring at the locked door. Marco put his ear against it. Listened. His face changed. "There's something moving down there." "It's an animal," Dean said. "Raccoon got in through a crawl space." "Raccoons don't thump," Jake said. I called the number on the welcome sheet. The host. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message describing the sounds and asking about the basement. Polite, but firm. I called again 10 minutes later. Voicemail again. Dean sent a message through the Airbnb app. No response. Jake noticed the doorbell camera, one of those smart doorbells with a motion sensor and a built-in camera. We hadn't thought about it until then. If the host has a camera, Jake said, they might be watching. That thought sat wrong with all of us, being watched in a rental you're paying for. But it also meant there might be footage. Jake pulled up the Doorbell Brands app on his phone, but it needed the owner's login. No luck. He did the next best thing. Walked outside and waved at the camera, then checked the motion light on the porch. "This thing is active," he said. "It's recording." He walked around the cabin's perimeter with his flashlight, and that's when he found the window. A small basement window on the backside of the cabin, partially hidden by bushes. The glass was dirty but intact, and it was open, not all the way, maybe 2 inches, enough for air. Jake shined his flashlight through the gap. The beam cut through dust and hit concrete floor, some boxes, a workbench, and in the far corner, past the reach of the light, a shape. Something that could have been a pile of blankets, or something under blankets. He jerked the flashlight back. "We're leaving." No one argued. We packed in 10 minutes, threw everything in the car, didn't bother cleaning up, didn't fold the towels, didn't turn off the lights. We drove the 30 minutes to town and checked into a motel. At 3:47 a.m., the host called back. Jake answered on speaker. "Hey, saw your messages. What seems to be the issue?" Jake described the thumping, the locked door, the window, the shape in the corner. Long pause. Then, "That basement is just storage. I keep it locked so guests don't go down there. Uneven floor, liability issue, probably just the pipes. Old cabin, the plumbing knocks sometimes." "We saw something through the window," Jake said, "in the corner. Probably just some tarps and old furniture. I really wouldn't worry about it." His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that sounds rehearsed. We didn't go back. We requested a refund through Airbnb and described what happened. The host denied everything. The review we left was factual. Locked basement, sounds, unresponsive host, open window. Within a week, 3 other reviewers came forward. All recent. One couple said they heard footsteps above them at night. In the attic. But the listing said the cabin was single-story. Another reviewer said the lockbox code had been changed while they were inside, locking them out of their own rental for an hour. A solo traveler said she woke up to find the front door unlocked in the morning when she was certain she'd locked it before bed. The listing was taken down 2 weeks later. No explanation from Airbnb, no news story, just gone. The cabin is probably still there, sitting in those woods with that locked door and whatever's behind it. I don't book isolated rentals anymore. Not cabins, not tree houses, not secluded retreats. If I can't see a neighbor's lights from the porch, I'm not staying. Some places are remote for a reason. And some hosts aren't renting the cabin to make money. They're renting it to bring people in. If you've ever had something happen while camping, something that made you pack up and leave in the middle of the night, share it in the comments. And if you don't want to sleep in the woods alone after hearing this, hit subscribe. We post new stories every week. Stay safe out there and check the locks.